Okay, Explorer students, this video is to explain the basic elements of an essay. And essentially your HSI report is an essay. So, there are three basic elements that I want you to focus on. One would be the introduction paragraph, two would be the body of work, and three would be the conclusion. In the introduction, it'll include a thesis, and I'll explain what a thesis is in the next slide. The body of work is the claims or evidence to support this thesis, and in your particular case with the HSI report, this is where your artifacts and inferences would be. And of course, the conclusion, the third paragraph. And what you're doing here is paraphrasing the introduction and thesis using strong, convincing language. So, paraphrase is a word that means that you're taking a sentence and changing the wording, but not the thought expressed in the sentence. So I'll show you what that means in another slide. So those are the three basic elements. Your HSI report should have three paragraphs: an introduction, a body of work, and a conclusion. So a thesis. What is a thesis? Well, a thesis tells the purpose of the writing. It's the main idea of the paper. Everything else in the paper or essay or your HSI report will support the idea of the thesis, and it's usually one sentence. Below is an example of a thesis, which I'm not going to talk about it at this time. I'll show you some other thesi, I guess you could say. So, a thesis tells the purpose of the writing, and it's in the introduction. So, the introduction. The introduction should be 3 sentences. The first would be called the bait, the hook, or the lead. It could be called any of those things, maybe something else even. The second sentence would be a transition sentence, and the third sentence would be your thesis. So in the bait and the hook, or lead, the first sentence, you're trying to catch a big fish, think of it that way. Trying to catch a big fish, the reader. You want to grab the attention of the reader, so they'll want to read more. So the stronger your beginning, the better you're going to get somebody to keep reading. And we'll talk about what a strong beginning actually means in another slide. Transition. This is a sentence that takes, like, if you're talking about a broader topic in the hook or lead, you're kind of narrowing it to the thesis topic. And I'll talk about this more in the next couple of slides. And again, the thesis is the third sentence, and it tells the purpose of the writing, the main idea. Okay, so let's see what this actually looks like. So, if I were to say that I was writing a paper about Jolly Rancher candy and how much I love to eat them, my thesis might be Jolly Rancher candy is the most enjoyable to eat. Everything else I write in that essay would be supporting this idea of Jolly Ranchers being enjoyable to eat. Now, for you in your HSI report, the best place to start might be your thesis. So your thesis in the HSI report would be something stating why Ollie was out doing what he was doing that day and how he got killed. That would be, you explain those two things in one sentence, that would be your thesis. And that might be the best place for you to start your introduction. Start at the end, so to speak. So, for the bait, hook, or lead, I want to grab every single reader's attention. Even readers who may not have ever had a Jolly Rancher candy. So I want my first sentence to be able to appeal to as many readers as possible, and that's what's meant by a broad topic in this first sentence of bait, hook, or lead. So let's see what in this particular case, what I'm talking about. So here's my bait. During the stressful days that happen in our lives, sometimes we need a sugary break to escape the chaos for a while. Okay, so this says nothing about Jolly Rancher candy, which is the point of my paper, the whole what my paper is going to be all about. But it does speak to people who know about stressful days. I think everybody has experienced a stressful day or two in their lives. So therefore, this is a broader topic. It talks to almost every single reader who may be reading my essay. And that's what I want to do. I want to appeal to them. I want to make a connection with them. So, my broader topic here about stress and the fact that sometimes we can relieve that stress by taking a sugary break. And you can see where this is going. I think sugary break means Jolly Rancher candies in the end. So how do I get from here, this broad topic, to here, my more narrow topic in my thesis? Well, with the transition sentence, and let's see. I want to take a thought from this bait, or hook or lead sentence, and a thought from the Jolly Rancher thesis, and put them together in the transition. And here it is. Candy is a good choice for that sugary escape from stress and chaos. So I've taken thoughts from my bait, hook, or lead, stressful, sugary break, escape, and chaos, and put them into my transition. And I've also taken the word candy and put it into the transition. So a thought from the bait, hook, or lead, a thought from the thesis, both in the transition. And I started with candy because this is what I'm going to talk about next in my thesis. So let's see what it all looks like together. During the stressful days that happen in our lives, sometimes we need a sugary break to escape the chaos for a while. Candy is a good choice for that sugary escape from stress and chaos. Jolly Rancher candy is the most enjoyable to eat. So there is my introduction. Broad topic, transition, bait, hook or lead, broad topic, transition, thesis, what my paper or what my essay is going to be all about. One more. Let's say my thesis was an iPhone is essential to every 6th grade student. Now you may agree with that and may want to read on if I put this up here in the bait, hook, or lead. But what about people who aren't 6th graders? What about adults? How am I going to appeal to them? If I begin with this, they may say, forget it. I'm not going to read. I don't want to know about 6th grade students and what's essential to them. So I need something, a bait, hook, or lead that will appeal to a broader audience, more people. And let's see what I wrote. And actually, I didn't write this. This was a student who wrote this a few years ago. Move over, dog. There's a new best friend in town. Okay. So we can all relate to pets and dogs and how they're man's best friend. So this appeals to more people than maybe this, my thesis. So I want to grab the readers. I think you know where this might be going. The new best friend in town is going to be the iPhone. Let's see. I want to take a thought from here, my bait, and a thought from here, my thesis, and put them together in my transition. Dogs are important old friends, but today the new friend is the iPhone. So there you see. Dogs, and the idea of friends from the bait, hook, or lead, and this idea of a new friend, the iPhone coming from my thesis, combining a thought from the thesis and the bait in the transition. So, move over, dog. There's a new best friend in town. Dogs are important old friends, but today the new friend is the iPhone. An iPhone is essential to every 6th grade student. Another example of an introduction. So, the second paragraph would be the body of work. And this is where you make your claims. And for you, it'll be, again, the artifacts and inferences. You need 3 artifacts and 9 inferences, 3 for each artifact. They provide the evidence that supports your thesis. So you're acting, this is going to be like you're sort of like a history detective. The number of claims can be different depending on what you're writing about. As I said, we want 3 artifacts and 9 inferences, 3 for each. And this is true. Usually every claim has its own paragraph. And then, for instance, every artifact would have its own paragraph, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to put it all into one paragraph. So, final paragraph, the conclusion. And this is kind of where you sum up your thesis in the paper, and you're going to reword any thoughts taken from the introduction. So it's kind of like you should think of the reader saying, okay, so what? I read all this. What's the point? and you want to make your final argument sort of in the conclusion. So you want to go back to your introduction and kind of paraphrase, this word paraphrase, meaning restate the thoughts you said in the introduction, but only write it in a different way. Here's an example of paraphrasing down here. Here's the thesis. An iPhone is essential to every 6th grade student. That would be in the introduction. And in the conclusion, I would paraphrase that thesis by saying, the evidence is clear that all 6th graders find the iPhone an absolute necessity. And I'm using strong language here. The evidence is clear. I'm not suggesting that it's clear. I'm stating that it's clear. The evidence is clear. And I'm using also this phrase, absolute necessity. Not just the word necessity, but an absolute necessity. So I'm using strong language, convincing language that the case I made is correct about the iPhone. So, one more thing. When you go to do your report, I'm encouraging you to use this document. It's called Paragraphs and Words to Use, and it's linked with the assignment. You can think of the Ollie HSI report as solving a mystery, maybe a historical mystery, and detectives solve mysteries and use evidence to prove their case. So, very quickly, an introduction. You need an introduction, 3 sentences. The first should be the hook or the grab the reader's attention. And I suggest words that you could use in this sentence. Mystery, detective, history. Okay? Those are just suggestions. You don't have to use them. The transition sentence. You want to transition from this idea here to your thesis. Maybe the words artifacts, evidence, demonstrate, and prove, because you're going to start to introduce your evidence, the fact that you're going to produce artifacts and inferences in your body of work. The third sentence, or the claim, or thesis, I should say, is going to be how Ollie died, basically, and what he was doing that day. So you could use words like Ollie, introduce Ollie, his name, and that he died and was killed in some way, shape, or form, or somehow he was killed. Okay, the body of work. 3 artifacts and 3 inferences for each. This is used to prove your claim. So you're kind of building a case here, an explanation of what happened that day and what led to his death. You should use the word inference or infer as you're introducing some of these. You don't have to use it every time you introduce an inference or infer, but you should use it periodically throughout the paragraph. Vary the use of how each sentence begins, and use transition words. And these possible transition words you could use are down below. The word first, another, in addition, also. So that varies your sentence beginnings, and it makes it, it doesn't give your essay sort of like a repeated feel to it, because you're beginning every sentence the same way. The conclusion, you're paraphrasing again. You're changing the words of the sentence, but not the meaning. And you're going to refer back to the introduction. So in the first sentence of the conclusion, it's going to be, you're going to go back to the hook or lead. The second sentence, you're going to go back to your transition again. Maybe you're mentioning evidence, the evidence is clear, or the artifacts clearly show. And then the third sentence, you're going to paraphrase and state your thesis again. And here are some possible words or transition words to use. Finally, in conclusion, considering all the evidence. Good way to start your conclusion. Remember, you must emphasize the conclusion with strong language. And here are some suggestions down here about how you can end with strong wording that your evidence proves your case, so to speak. So that's it. When you're done with this, you can start your first draft on the document that I told you to use in the attachment.